Okay, your take-home quiz 2 has been graded. This answer key has been posted, and this video is just going to provide some more detail on how I graded your work. So first of all, I added point values to the answer key that's linked in the calendar. Now, there were only 6 questions on this quiz, so each question weighs a lot of points. On your test, there's going to be 18 questions, so each question and each part of the question will weigh much fewer points. So the grading could seem a little harsh on the quiz. Remember, quizzes are low stakes way to check your understanding. So ideally, you're taking this quiz without notes, without help. You're pretending it's a test. I'm grading it like I will grade a test with partial credit. And that way you can learn from your mistakes in this low stakes situation before you take a test. Take-home quizzes are only 10% of your overall grade. We have a lot of them. I drop one, so each take-home quiz doesn't impact your overall grade that much directly, but it does impact your learning. Learning from mistakes on this take-home quiz will help you do well on the test, which is 80% of your grade. So yes, they're low stakes, but they are important. Okay, so let's talk about the problems on this quiz. So number 1, you were asked to find limits just by reading a graph. So you did not need to provide any explanation of your work or any supporting work. You could just go straight to these answers, and those were 5 points each. I provided some extra explanation here for teaching purposes, but that wasn't needed. But then on number 2, this one was weighted 25 points total. This is an applied calculus class. Lots of your points will come from application problems where you're asked to do a calculation and then you're asked to interpret or explain what that calculation means in the context of the problem. So part A was only 5 points because it's just a plug and check. It's asking you to calculate the number of components after 6 days. You just plug it into your function, you're done. But in B, you're asked to find a limit as t approaches infinity and then explain what that means. So there was 10 points for finding the limit and 10 points for the explanation. Now, be sure that you clearly show either with calculus or algebra or some non-graphical way how we know the limit is 100. I used the theorem that we talked about in class. There are more sophisticated algebra ways to manipulate our function and then take the limit. If you use a more sophisticated method or any method that was not shown in class, make sure you show every single step to verify that you own that method, that you understand that method. And if I have any questions when I'm reading through your steps on a test, I'll just ask to arrange a meeting with you and then just give you a chance to talk it out to show me you know it. Great, you'll get your points. Okay, so question 2B and question 3B were similar in that you were asked to find a limit at infinity. I've shown on the answer key the theorem method that we covered in class. Now, several of y'all used an algebra method. Again, if you used a method different than we used in class, that's okay, as long as it's mathematically correct and as long as you show every step. And if you don't, I'll just arrange a meeting with you. You come, you explain it to me. Great, you get your points. Okay, the only other thing I wanted to point out was on question number 4, when you're asked to do the 4-step process, there is some wishy-washy notation going on. So make sure you're keeping that limit notation in your work all the way until you're actually ready to take the limit. So what I needed to see was that you are taking the limit as h goes to 0 of this simplified difference quotient. Once we do all this work, all that algebra to simplify the difference quotient, we end up with 3 minus 2x minus h. We're taking the limit of that as h approaches 0. So then I need to see that you're actually taking the limit. To take the limit, you're plugging in h equals 0. Once I do that, I do not need the limit notation anymore. Okay? And then I need to see that you knew that whole process is what's producing the derivative. Okay. And I'll just mention one other thing really quickly. Make sure on 5 and 6 that you're clearly showing which rules were used. And you're at least, if nothing else, showing that basic rule and distinctly showing the chain rule. So for example, on number 5, it's a power function. So I use the power rule. And the base was not a plain X, so I needed to take the derivative of the base. That's the chain rule. So whatever notation you want to use, I used prime notation here. Make sure you're showing the rule you use and the chain rule. And then there's different ways to write your simplified answer. I used a negative exponent, but you could rewrite it to use root notation since that's what your original function used in 5. Okay, if you have any questions about how your work was graded, shoot me an email, and I will see you tomorrow.